Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Crew First Culture podcast. My name is Jeremy. I want to thank you very much for spending some time with us again today. And today you will not be disappointed. I promise it's going to be well worth your time. I've got a guest on that I have been looking forward to talking to for probably, I don't know, 10, 11 months, basically ever since I've heard him talk. And so without any further, today I have Chief Frank Viscuso on with me. How are you doing today, Chief?
Great, brother. Thank you so much for the invite. It's good to be here.
No problem. I kind of what I like to do right off the bat is people like you that have been on quite a bit of other podcasts and things like that. I want to steer them towards some of those as far as like if you've given backstories and things like that. And so there are quite a few that you've been on. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to maybe steer them in that direction and we can kind of focus on some more recent stuff if that's all right with you.
Sure, whatever you want.
Sounds good. So definitely some of those, and I'll pull up my phone real quick to make sure I don't skip some of them. I just listened to the FBNA Nation podcast that you were on. You give a little backstory there. One of my favorite ones is the Behind the Shield episode you did.
Yeah.
A lot of good stuff in that one. You did Fit to Fight Fire podcast, a couple Jump Seat Radio podcasts, uh, Firefighter Toolbox, and the Weekly Scrap are kind of the main ones that I've heard and really enjoyed those. There are several notes that I've taken from those to hopefully dig a little bit further into. But that being said, without cutting you off any further, just give us a little bio, as much or as little as you want to give us, and we'll get going.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, it's interesting you mentioned those podcasts because at least two of them right off the bat, I remember that the guys that were running those podcasts asked me if I would come on, and I was one of their first or second episodes for a couple of them, and they're doing quite well, producing a lot of content.
Yeah.
And I had the same conversation with both of them because they're thinking that firefighters aren't accessible. In other words, they're trying to start this podcast, and I guess they're thinking that I have a big name in the fire service. And I said I'm not a big shot. I'm just a little shot who keeps shooting, and that's honestly all I'm about. I'm just a guy who wants to put positive in a world that tends to sometimes steer towards the negative. I look at it this way: if you take your hands off the wheel of your car for a while, right, it drifts eventually. Maybe it's because the road is sloped, and so it'll start drifting after a while. And I want to be that guy that kind of helps you get back on track. And I don't know why. It's how I'm made. It's how I was built. It's how I was designed as a person. It's like this is what you're here for. Um, I am the son of a firefighter. I'm the brother of a firefighter. I followed both of them into the fire service. My brother and I actually took the test together, and but he got hired before I did, a couple years before I did, and we both rose to the rank of deputy chief prior to retiring. This is what I do full time now: is write, teach, consult, and in and out of the fire service. Just talk about leadership, team development, customer service. But it all started with the journey in the fire service. It wasn't like I got into. I wasn't a writer who became a firefighter. Be honest with you, Jeremy. When I started writing my first book, I wrote my first book with these three fingers. Looking for each letter, and just using that thumb for my space bar.
uh,
I didn't know how to change fonts. I didn't know how to change margins, anything like that. I'm working off my first computer, figuring out as I go along. And and so, if you ever read my first couple of books, what you're reading are books of a guy who's learning how to become a writer. And now I'm at that point where I figured a lot of things out. It just took some while to get there. And I remember one time somebody was talking about the band, the Police, and they said, when you listen to the Police, their first records, what you're listening to is three guys learning how to play their instruments, learning how to be a band. And I don't know if I agree with that or not, because I'd have to go back and listen to it. But I guess a lot of it was experimental, and that's how I feel.
yeah.
Is I don't have uh, things that I want to accomplish, I don't have it figured out
Well,
before I try to accomplish it. I figure it out as I go. And that kind of sums up me, to a certain degree. Um, and I'm not sure if that's a background. I assume a lot of people know, I've spent over
oh yeah,
25 years in the fire service, but it's more about the drive, the passion, where it comes from. Some people could put a finger on it,
yeah,
some people can't. But I know for me, it's a desire to want to bring positive.
yeah. I like, what you just said. I think it's a really cool statement that you made. And just digging a little bit deeper into that, you said that you didn't have it figured out when you started. And that's a great lesson, I think, for everybody out there, because a lot of people are waiting until they get it figured out to
Yes.
get started. And and that's either going to lead you to never getting anything done, or just wasting a lot of time that you could have been doing good things. And so I I wanted to make sure I made that point to kind of dig deeper into that. And I'm sure you agree with that.
100%. You
Yeah,
will figure out more by let's put it this way, if you're an athlete, you could practice all you want, but until you get into a game and start competing, you won't know the intensity level that you need to compete at. You won't know the pitfalls. You won't understand, like, hey, this is the point where I get tired, so this is what I need to work through. I have friends that are UFC fighters that when they're training for a 5-round fight, they're actually preparing for a 6-round fight, because that extra round is where they're going to get, that extra stamina to make sure that they can go those 5 rounds. So, things like that, you have to get in the arena at some point. Otherwise, you'll never figure out what it takes to succeed in the arena.
yeah. That's kind of a little bit of the message I try to share quite a bit, is because I think there's so many people out there that have so many great things to give. Everybody, I feel, has something to give. I don't care what it is. I don't care who you are, where you came from, what you're doing. You've got something to give. And just allowing the the excuses to creep in, or the fears to creep in, or whatever it is that's blocking you from those things getting done, man. I want to really push people through that, through those times, get out of that comfort zone, and really get into why you're here. And so that's a powerful thing to really share with everybody.
Yeah, and see, now you got a platform to do it now. That's what's beautiful about society today. There's a lot of negative out there, but there's a lot of people like you putting positive content out there too. So, and anyone can do it. That's the part that a lot of people don't realize, is they think that, you need somebody to come in and say, okay, now I'm anointing you, a person who can go make a difference in your organization. No, you just need to make that decision yourself and then go do it.
So I trying to think of where to, I guess a good spot to start here, and really the direction I want to go is exactly where we're at, that positivity and things like that. But I was given a really good question by somebody that wanted to ask you, and I think it'll be a very interesting thing to hear. But how and who has influenced you to become, at the time, a deputy chief, but maybe even more importantly, an author and a speaker, somebody that really tries to reach the masses with your message? Who and how did that influence come about?
Well, as far as deputy chief goes, it would without question be my own father and my brother. I mean, they were my inspiration and you see, and that's the interesting thing, by the way. Sometimes you don't need to go far to find a positive role model. They could be in your own house growing
Yeah,
up. My father was and still is, one of the most kind people you'll ever meet. He cares about community. I've never heard him say a bad word about another human being ever in my life. I've never heard it. And I know that he's had issue. He's a human being, so he's had
oh yeah,
conflict in his life. I've never heard him say one bad word about a human being. And every now and then, it makes me think that I have so much more growth to do, to become more like my father, because I'm a guy that, I'm very transparent with my feelings. If I'm angry, concerned, anger, frustrated, those things you can see on my face. And I kept it from the people I was working with, but from the people that are close to me, I'll sit there and sometimes, it'll be that vomiting all this negativity out of, can you believe this or that? But what it is it's venting, because I'm a guy that I need to clear things out and then focus on a solution. It's a very quick shift for me. Like let me. It's almost like if you feel sick, I think I'm gonna vomit. All right, well, sometimes you just need to do it, and then you can get back to getting better. And but so I have that part of me too. And I want to be clear about that. It's not like it's all like if this was a nothing but positivity all the time in your life, it's hard to maintain that.
Yeah.
So, you know, but now when I watch my father, I'm like, well, there's a guy who does it better than I've ever done it. He's also has a work ethic, and I mean well into his 80s. He has a work ethic that exceeds the work ethic I see of most people in their 30s. It's a mentality, and just if he'll go as far as his body will physically let him go when he's out there working, and he's still doing, physical labor, by choice. He doesn't have to, but my brother will buy a house, and they're renovating it, and who's there helping him putting a new floor? My father. So these guys have been a big inspiration for me. And then there's the mentors you find along the way, the people like Chief Mike Turpak, or Anthony Avillo, who are local in my county, who also inspired me to be an author. By the way, because it's kind of these guys inspired me to be an officer in the fire service. Then they were both best-selling authors in the fire service, and I thought, well, I have a message. I have a message too. And when I was creating these study guides and writing SOGs for my organization, but creating study guides, um, I approached Chief Mike Turpak, Deputy Chief from Jersey City, retired now, but he wasn't at the time. And I said, look, I have an idea for a book, Fireground Operational Guides, which ultimately consisted of 70 um, operational guides that can be study guides, templates for SOGs, or they could just be refreshers or drill templates.
Yep.
And we wrote this book together because I learned so much from him. And so we wrote the book together, and the book comes with a disc that if you print the disc out or put the disc in your computer and print out the content on it, you get all 70 guides. And I used to drive around in the vehicle when I became a deputy chief with those guides. And if I were to show up to a water main break and I would deal with that issue, I would then open up the guide to the water main break and say, oh, here's a couple more things I need to do that I didn't do yet. And it would help me through an incident. And as an example, while I was writing that book with Chief Turpak, um, we had a bomb scare at a local store, very large store, and it was Walmart. And when I went in there, a young police officer was there. It's early in the morning, late at night. However, it felt like it was 2 a.m., but it's not open at 2 a.m. But it was just before the holiday, so it's probably around 10:30, 11, just very dark. But when I pull up, a young officer walks up to me and he sees me pull up in a chief. He says, "All right, chief, we got a call of a that there's a bomb in here. We started evacuating. What do we do?" I said, "What do we do?" I said, "I'm just here if something goes boom." This is, I mean, it's your incident right now,
Yeah.
but he didn't know what to do. And so, we formed our teams. We went in, searched, made the appropriate calls, did everything that needs to get done. But then I spent the next week and a half really researching the fire department's job at an incident like that, and then added that as an operational guide. Um, and and so that's kind of what that book was all about. But to answer your question about who inspired me, um, Chief Mike Turpak, as an example, is a guy who inspired me to achieve a higher level in the fire service and as an author. And here's a guy that was also, and is still one of the most knowledgeable people I've ever known, and a tremendous speaker. And I'll tell you this, Jeremy, when I wrote Step Up and Lead, I didn't even know that there was, for lack of a better word, a speaker circuit. I didn't know, because we didn't bring in we brought in people to give us training when we needed CEUs, but we weren't bringing in people to train us and say, here's someone that's coming in to do a leadership class.
Yeah.
We didn't do that all that often. So when I wrote that book and people started asking me to come in and speak, and next thing I know, I'm traveling not just throughout the country, but in Europe, Canada. I've been to Italy and Greece on their naval bases, and got asked to come to Spain and Guam and Australia. And I'm sitting there going, I don't know what's happening with this right now, but I'm so glad that people are gravitating towards this message,
Yeah.
which is the one we started this podcast with about, you can make a difference. You can make a difference. And that's what the whole message is, and how to make a difference.
I, I I'm glad that, and I was taking a few seconds there before you started to try to kind of figure out what direction I was going, but I'm glad I asked that first to not only get an idea and help others to kind of get an idea of what has gotten you there, but also because it ties right into everything, everything that I want this conversation to hit on. And just getting going from there. I love your message of basically just treating people right. And I'll give you a little backstory on just a story from me.
Okay.
I've got a very good friend, uh, Captain Ryan DeBoard. He retired, I think, about 3 years ago, and got his pilot license and retired, and is a pilot now. But I remember something he told me when he was studying for promotional tests. He's like, we have just books and books and information on top of information to study and all this stuff. And he told me, all of this crap can be condensed into one line. Treat people like you want to be treated. The
Yes.
golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And I started, and the more, and this has been, like I said, 3 years ago, and I can't get that out of my mind. It's like, it's not that hard. It really isn't. I mean, it is, but we complicate it a lot more than it probably should. So that being said, I mean, obviously that is a part of your platform, but do you kind of agree with the simplicity of that?
Not only do I agree with it, I want to stress again the simplicity of it. If you're an officer in the fire service, be the officer you always wanted as your officer. And you know what that person should bring to the table: someone who's knowledgeable and competent, somebody who cares about the people that they're leading. And if you care about the people you're leading, think about this. You and I are both dads. Okay. A lot of the people that are going to listen to this will be parents. Um, the people that you're leading, you have to look at them like they're your children. And I don't mean that in a way where they don't know
Yeah,
anything. I mean that
yeah,
in a way where when my children do something good, I praise them for it. If my children are doing something wrong or incorrectly, I correct them. If they consistently do it wrong, I discipline them. And I don't discipline as a form of punishment. There are times as a parent you do discipline as a form of punishment. Give me that iPad and you lost it for 3 days. There's
yeah,
times we do that stuff. But um, but discipline should be a tool you use to correct. Like, I want my kids to be successful, and for me to make them successful or give them the chance to become successful, I have to create scenarios to allow them to figure out how to navigate through them. So let's bring this into the fire service now. As a fire officer, are you, and this, I don't care if you're an officer or not. I mean, you could be a firefighter with 3 months on the job and you can take a good lesson out of this message. But as
yeah,
an officer, are you training your personnel every day you come to work? Because if you're not, you're failing.
yeah,
You're failing. And what does training your personnel mean? Well, looking at ways for them to improve. If you're not helping them improve, that's like saying, I just don't care about you.
yeah,
I want my kids to be successful. Well, I want my firefighters to be successful, especially because there's life and death at stake. So you have to be, the stakes are too high. You have to be very good at what you do. And so if people are showing up at work and they're not giving their best effort, and their attitude sucks. We need to correct that. And you see behind me, it's funny because I just ordered this green screen. So right, so because I do podcasts myself, and a lot of busyness behind me. But the fact is, this is all important stuff, because when you're doing these kinds of things, you get a little insight into people's lives, and people can see that I'm committed to coaching baseball, and I have my old helmets, and I have some of Paul Combs' artwork from our calendar that we did together, and but these are also things that are important to my family. So, like, this baseball right here was my son's all-star team, and everybody signed that.
Are you there, Chief?
Travel wreck. And my son says to me, Nicholas, he says, I want to be a pitcher on our team. I said, okay. I said, not yet. He says, why? I want to pitch. I said, well, you don't get to pitch just because you're the coach's kid. And he says, but I want to pitch. Thinking this is going to be like, Dad, this is what I want. I mean, why can't I have it? And I said, do you really want to pitch? I said, because here's the deal. There's kids on this team that put in the work to pitch, that they go outside, 3 days a week with their dad, or they take lessons. I said, if you really want to pitch, you need to put in the work. And the work is, we need to do drills in the house when it's cold, and we need to go out in the backyard and throw 25 pitches every day we can. I said, do you really want to be a pitcher? He said, yeah. I said, well, it starts today. So that's what we did. Well, now he gets to the point where he's actually looking pretty good, but then COVID happens. And when COVID happens, everything's shut down. We don't know if it's going to pick up again. We never stopped. Every single day, we went to a local ball field, me and my 2 boys and my wife most of the time, and we put them in the field, and they hit, they pitched, they fielded, they caught some balls in the outfield every single day that we could. And I would say at least 5 days a week we did it. And got to the point where I was telling my wife, I'm like, I'm not kidding you. He's a really good pitcher. Like, he's there now. Well, sure enough, he ends up turning out to be a really fantastic pitcher for his division last year, and ends up making his all-star team and pitching in a championship game, which they won. And I thought, if that's not the lesson that you want to teach your boy or daughter, if that's not the lesson, what is? I want something good. Go out and earn it.
Yep.
And as a dad, I'll put the time in with you. That's one of the beautiful things about the fire service, by the way. If we do it right, you have the time to spend with your family, and I'm so grateful for that. But now, again, take this whole lesson and let's bring it into the fire service. Well, what's at stake? I mean, they may not come and say, I want to be the best firefighter ever. They may not come to you and say that, but you have to have the conversation with them where you say, look, if everyone you loved, while we're here at work today, if everyone you loved was trapped in a fire, would you want you and your crew being first due? Because if the answer is yes, great, let's keep doing what we're doing. If the answer is, well, I mean, I don't know. And it's easy to say, well, it's my family. Yes, I want to be first due.
Oh yeah.
But what if it's not your family now? What if it's somebody else's family? Or do you feel, and this is for every listener, do you feel that you are on an engine or a ladder company that you absolutely believe is the best option for somebody's life safety? You're the best option to save somebody's life over anyone else in the country. If you feel that way, awesome. If you don't, you want to strive for that, because this is what you do. The stakes are not winning and losing a baseball game. It's saving or losing a life. So you don't need anyone's permission to be great at what you do. You just need to come to work with this thought of, let's be great. And that requires training. It requires discipline. And if you're an officer, you have to be a person that says, I'm going to put the work in. We're going to create an environment where training is not only essential to be part of this team, but we're going to make it fun. A lot of people don't even realize training could be fun. And it is. It could be fun. It's hard work. It takes discipline. It takes skill. It could be tedious at sometimes, but we could enjoy it. And I've never seen a group of firefighters after a difficult training session sit down and say, that stunk. No, they usually feel good about themselves, right? It's like, hey, that was great. We got out there and we did something. That mass confidence course was difficult, or man, that was a long day of extrication training, but you feel good about it afterwards. And that's what we need more of.
And there is so much in that little, whatever you want to call it, your little blip, whatever, what you just said, that I want to get into. I think first off, going back a little bit, is the family thing. Oh,
Yeah.
first of all, I just love being around people that love their family. I just
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah, me too.
And it's almost, I guess if I look at it a little bit deeper, I guess it's almost in relation, like you've been saying, into the fire service, in relation to a firefighter that is passionate about the job. And
Yeah.
you start kind of absorbing some of that passion. When I'm around people that love their family and talk about them, and just, you can tell that they mean so much to them, I start absorbing some of that myself, and I just really love that. But I have felt exactly the same way that you said about the kid, treating people like your kids. And I know that gives some people of negative connotation. But like you said, I'm not saying I'm treating you like a kid,
Right.
not just any kid. I'm treating you like my kids. And if anybody that knows me, you probably should take that as a compliment, because I love my kids. I want my kids to succeed and to gain a productive, happy life when they get older. And so that's what I'm talking about. I
Hunch.
want my people to succeed and to get better than even they thought they could get. And so I totally agree with you on that, for sure.
And I love what you just said. You said, I'm not treating you like a kid. I'm
Yep.
treating you like you're my kid. That's powerful. It's a powerful way to put it. And that's exactly how I looked at it too. We'll hold you accountable.
Yep.
I'll send you to your room when you're bad, if you're my son. And I'm also going to hold you accountable at work if you don't do your job. But at the same time, know what my goal and what my drive is, and it's to help you succeed. Because if you succeed, we all succeed.
That, yeah, I just love that. I could talk about kind of that forever. And it's just funny that, every time I have these conversations with people like you, you just never know where it's going to go, which is good. That's why I like it.
Yeah.
But it just always brings things to light that you maybe not thought about in a certain way, or maybe not even thought at all. And so just fun to see where things go like this.
Yeah.
Uh, something else that I want to really touch on is kind of where you ended that converse, or that little talk with, is, the getting better, and the don't need permission to be great, I think is how you say it. That's kind of that's trying to think of a good word to say. That's the journey I'm on right now. I'm a captain and station officer, still fairly new in it, and constantly evolving. I've been, I think, 3 years now as a company officer, and the officer I am today is a completely different person than the officer I was 3 years ago. And I feel like that's a good thing, because I feel like I am heading in a good direction. But that being said, that what you explained is my mindset. I want to be good at what we do. And I almost feel like you almost have to kind of, if you allow the fire service to dictate what you're training on, and what you're doing every day, I don't know that you're ever going to get very good at anything because there's so many things we're responsible for. So we have kind of boiled it down to three areas. Hose, so hose deployment, hose movement, hose, everything to do with hose, forcible entry, and search. So search, VES, stuff like that, because those are the three things we have to be really, really good at. And so those are the things I want to mainly focus on. If the other things come along, that's fine. I'm not trying to say that we don't do anything else, but those three things I want to be good at. Of course, we're on an engine crew.
Right.
We don't have trucks, so we're responsible for forcible entry. We're responsible for search. So do you agree with that? Do you have a different opinion on that?
No, I actually do agree with that, and I have an interesting story to go in that direction. Is uh, I was having this conversation with my officers one year, and we start the year with this little meeting. Which, by the way, at this meeting, I I started by telling them each something I appreciated about them, about their leadership style, their work ethic, whatever it may be. I have 7 or 6 officers in the room on that particular day, and I said, "Hey, listen, before we get started, I want to tell you something I appreciate about every one of you, because I want a positive tone in this meeting,
Yeah.
um, because there's things that I need to correct with each one of them too, just like my boss would need to correct things with me. That's a whole different conversation. That's private conversation. But this is a meeting where it's like, let's talk about what we're doing right
Yep.
for. Have you ever got to get? I mean, think about this. Think about if your boss said to you, "Let's get everybody together," and he started off by telling you the thing he appreciated the most about you. Um, that makes you feel good, right? And I understand this, and people need to hear positive. But then we talked about what we want to accomplish, and I said, "What do you guys think we do really well that we need to keep doing?" And at that point, I shut up and I started taking notes because I want to see how they like. I could tell you what I think we do really well,
Yep.
but I might be disconnected to some of the things they think they do really well. And they talked about training, they talked about customer service, they talked about a lot of important stuff. I said, "What do you think we're doing wrong that we need to stop doing because we're not getting a good result?" So we talked about that, but then I said, what don't you think we're doing at all that we need to start doing?" So it was a keep, stop, start
Yep.
conversation. What do we need to keep doing? What do we need to stop doing? What do we need to start doing? And when we got to what we need to start doing, one of my officers says, "Chief, if we're being honest with ourselves, we do train a lot." And I wouldn't change that for anything because we were training 3.5 hours a day, every day. And but we're there for 24. You could train
Yeah.
for 3.5 unless you get
Yeah.
really busy days. So he says, if we're being honest with ourselves, we train a lot, but we're not doing it right. He said, right now, we have 3 firefighters that only have a few months on the job. They've never seen a structure fire yet of any significance. We have brand new drivers, and half the officers here have never been officers because they're brand new officers at a structure fire yet. Yet we did more training in technical rescue, decon, confined space than we have in basic structural firefighting these last couple of
Yep.
months. And if we're being honest with ourselves, we need to get back to basics.
Yep.
And so now I have 2 choices here. I could think, well, I'm here, this is my shift. And I could say, yeah, but we're doing that training because that was scheduled 6 months ago. And this is when they clean the tanks down at the asphalt plant. That's why we're doing technical rescue. And I could just defend, and discount what he's saying. Or I could listen with the intent of understanding.
Yeah.
Because when he's telling me this, now I'm hearing what they complain about when I'm not around.
Yep.
This is a bunch of crap with another technical rescue drill. That's what they're really saying.
Yeah.
But so I said, "Do all of you agree with that?" And the other 5 officers said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, great." I said, "Well, let's talk about this." And we talked about what do we need to be great at a structure fire. So if you're on an engine company and a ladder company, I have them both represented in the room. I said, "So let's talk about our engine crew. If you're going to be successful, what do you need to be great at?" Well, water supply and selecting and deploying the appropriate hose lines, right? Like you talked about. Ladder companies, search and rescue, like you talked about, ventilation, laddering the building, forcible entry. And an engine company and a ladder company working together need to do what? Communicate. Well, those are the areas you train on right there.
Yep.
Water supply, selection and deployment of your hose lines, laddering buildings, forcing entry, ventilating, and search and rescue, and coordination and communication. Focus on those 7 areas every time you train for structural firefighting.
Yeah.
I mean, when it's a hazmat incident, it's different. If you're doing a decon drill, if you're doing an EMS drill, but if you're training on what are we looking to train on, it has to be in one of those 7 areas. And there's multiple different facets of each area. You could
Oh
do
yeah.
several weeks of just forcible entry training. So
Yeah.
it's not like it's like we're going to do an hour of it today and we're done for 6 months.
Yeah.
Unused skills fade very quickly.
Oh yeah.
And even like, right now I have in front of me this sheet right here. My boys, I just signed them up for yesterday, signed them up for 10-week pitching camp. 10 weeks every Sunday morning for 1 hour with a guy who, uh, you know, pretty successful guy who played Division One, was with the Phillies organization for a while. And why did I do it? Well, because unused skills fade quickly. I don't know if this guy can make them better. He definitely can make them better than I can. He's done it at a much higher level than I have. But what I want him to do is every week I want them to pitch, because if they don't, they'll lose it. Well, I wanted my firefighters every week to search and rescue. I wanted them to stretch lines every week. I wanted them to force entry every week. Find the way, and we don't always have buildings we can train on. So, all the traveling I do, let me tell you something, Jeremy. All the traveling that I do, I have seen fire departments that they are blessed. They basically have academies in their backyards. And I mean, literally, come out, walk 40 steps, and we have a burn building right there. And we can go cut the roof open. We have these tremendous props. I look at these and I always ask the same questions. When's the last time you guys used that? We haven't been there probably like 4 months. I'm like, 4 months? I'd be in there every day if we had that, And granted, maybe not every day. I mean, but as often as possible. And, I was at a department recently and they had the roof prop in the back where, you have to just keep, putting some new parts on top, cut them, make your vent hole. And I asked them, 4 days in a row, I was with their organization. And 4 days in a row, I asked, when was the last time you used that prop out there? And all of them, it was more than 1 year ago.
Wow.
I said, it's okay. It was more than a year ago that you used that prop. So let me ask you a question. How many of you have actually been on a roof at a structure fire and vented a roof in the last year? Now you think about this. If you ask an organization this, you're only going to get a handful of hands at most, because even if they were at the fire where that happened, they may not have been the person doing that task at that time. So a handful of people can say, I was on a roof where I opened up a roof using our saw in the last 12 months. So you don't have that skill right now. I mean, it's easy to say, I could start a saw and make a cut. Of course you can. But if you're not pitching regularly and now I put you in a championship game, can you handle it? Well, I don't know. See, I'll tell you this about my boys. Once a week, they pitch a game to me. They'll throw 50 pitches or more once a week. So as soon as their season starts, which is months from now, but as soon as their season starts, they will be the ones you could throw in the very first game to go 5 innings. They'll be the ones because they will be baseball ready, just like you need to be firefighter ready every day.
Again, a couple definitely areas that I want to dig in there. The first one is you talk about the conversation you had with your crew, and you had that guy that stood up and said, Chief, we're doing it wrong. That
Right.
I think that right there was a huge opportunity for you. And by that, I mean, that could have been a turning point in either direction. You could have had the mindset of, okay, I appreciate your feedback, but I feel this is where we need to focus on. So we're going to do this. And then you got the flip side of the coin as what you did, and sit back, listen, absorb it, and really gain, whatever you got from that. Man, like a basketball game, you talk about a 6-point swing or whatever like that. Man, that is a huge 6-point swing right there. To think of where your crew or shift or whatever that was, that where they would have been if you took that perspective and said, thanks, but no thanks. I got my own way and we're going to do this,
Yeah.
as opposed to a crew that looks at that situation and says, that guy had a problem with what we were doing. He stood up. He was honest about it. He gave feedback. Chief sat there and listened quietly, took it all in, and he changed the way we do things because he agreed with it. Man, that is a huge swing of differences there. I mean, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%. And there's a couple things. I mean, that's an environment that you can create. See, there's a lot of people in leadership positions that they make their decisions off fear or greed or ego. So it's easy if someone says we're doing it wrong and you're the boss, it's easy for you to say, who are you to tell me we're doing things wrong? Like you're not all right, and want to punish that person. And we've all been in a situation where we've worked for a person like that in one way, shape, or form throughout our career,
Yeah.
or you've had
Oh,
a
yeah.
boss or a teacher like that. I've been there too, and it stinks. But this is a crew that I had that relationship with that they knew that they can say things like that to me because it wasn't a condescending, you don't know what you're talking about kind of remark at all.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
hey, we are doing a lot of great things, but we're not focused in where we need to be focused. It's like, I focused this last year, and I use these analogies hoping people can understand it. But last year, my team they won over the last couple years 6 championships. They won 6 championships in tournaments, but in the division and the league that we play in, we made the championship game twice for the league, and we lost twice. Last year, we were they just had a pitcher that our kids stood in the box scared. They were scared. He threw
Yeah.
faster, and I tell you, the kid was a great pitcher. Um, but but they shouldn't have been scared. This year, whole different ball game. They believed in themselves all season long, and they were hitting the fast pitchers, and we had more arms than anybody else, and they play in the field was phenomenal. But we got to the championship game again, and an error was made in the very first inning, and our kids didn't recover from it. And I started looking at their faces, and I said, for the first time in 12 months, I saw nervous faces. And I was saying to them, guys, it's a game. Enjoy yourselves, have fun. And which is what I tell them regularly. But at the same time, what they were thinking is, oh no, this is the championship game again. And what I realize is they need to be mentally stronger. They need to be mentally stronger because when they play their best, they're unbeatable. And a strong term, unbeatable, everybody's beatable. But when they play their best, they are very, very hard team to beat. They didn't show up that day. And, and when I saw that, I'm like, okay, so my focus was getting them back to the championship. That was my focus, and we did it. I should have been focused on making them mentally stronger. And so I sat down with my other coach just a week ago, and we talked about this is what we need. We need to get them mentally stronger. We need to focus on the mental aspect of it. And we shift the way that we coach. We know we can get them to championship games. We did it 2 years in a row. We did it in 6 tournaments. We did it in 8 tournaments. We just won 6 of them. But what we need to do is we need to focus on what we know their weaknesses. They're 8, 9, 10 years old, so they're not going to sit and say, we're doing it wrong. But the guy at work might. So you need to be open to hear that, to say, okay, I know how to get you to the championship game. Now I need to teach you how to win it. And you just gave me a tip. You just told me that my focus on what I'm doing can get us only so far. And you're telling me you need something else to win on the fire ground. You have to be open to hear that. Everybody listen to this needs to know this. I'm going to tell you this right now. You are not good enough. You need to get better. And I don't mean that to where you need to feel like you're not good. You are good. You're very good. You're good enough as a human being. But as far as a fire service leader, you're not good enough. You need to get better. I say that to everybody, including myself. I was not good enough. I needed to consistently get better, because the day that you fool yourself into thinking you're good enough is the day you get complacent, and complacency kills. So I want you to know you're good enough to make change. You're good enough to do the job, but you're not good enough to ever think that you've arrived. So I hope I made sense with that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think all of that is only made possible if those leaders foster an environment that people feel trusted, or people feel like they can do that. They are able to be honest
Right.
and able to give that feedback. And as an officer, I think it is so important to create that environment. You hear lots and lots of hold your people accountable. As a supervisor, you have to hold your employees accountable. This and this and this and this and this. But you also have to be willing to give that accountability to those people below you to give back to you. And
Yeah.
I know that's kind of confusing how I said that, but you have to allow them to hold you accountable as well,
Yeah.
because it doesn't go one way. I don't feel like if you want it to go one way, you're never going to truly succeed and reach your and your team's potential. It's got to go both ways.
Yeah, it has to go both ways. Because we're in this battle together. This is not something that it's like, okay, the bells ring. Good luck. See you when you get back. We're all going out that door together. So we have to, I call it interlocking accountability, whereas everybody's accountable to each other. And I believe in that wholeheartedly. And to the point where you have to have somebody on your team that is that has permission to have the hard conversation with you. You have to have somebody that, and it may not be everybody. You may say, look, I've been on a job for 28 years. I don't want somebody with 6 months in the job telling me we're doing it wrong. I get that completely. They got 6 months on the job. They don't know what right and wrong is yet. I totally get that. But maybe you have somebody with 23 years on the job that you have a good relationship with, that can come in and say, hey, chief or cap, we need to talk. Um, there was when I was a young firefighter, there was a guy several years more than I had on the job that I felt like he was like the mother of the group, where he took care of things. Like if there was a problem between a firefighter and an officer, he was actually the guy like that took ownership of solving that problem, and would talk to both. And he was respected by the officers. He was respected by the firefighters. So he was a great culture creator because everybody had respect for him. And as I rose through the ranks, I find myself at one point being a deputy chief where he's one of my senior members. And that was a great place for me to be, because I knew I had a guy that if I had a problem, I can go down to him and say, hey, listen, there's an issue I need your help with. And by the way, I want you to think about this. I'm a deputy, and sometimes I had an issue with a captain, and I'm going to a firefighter to deal with it. Why? Because I can easily, and I have said to the captain, you're doing it wrong. This is the way you need to do it. I have those conversations with him. But this particular firefighter and that captain had a great relationship. So when it came from him and he said, hey, look, and this is I'm just going to randomly throw out names, a Joe and Frank conversation. I'm just using my brother and my name but a Joe and Frank conversation where you sit down and say, hey, Joe, because that's how they talk to each other anyway. When they're, let's go get a beer. It's not,
Mhm.
these guys grew up together. They went to high school together. They've been friends for years together. So they can have that conversation. And I could say, look, something's not right on this group. The captain and his firefighter are at odds. You have a great relationship with both of them. I need you to do your thing. Why? Because I was the firefighter and I watched him do this. So I know he's got the ability to make things better. So let me give him that credit he deserves. He's a culture creator. He never wanted to be an officer. He never, to my recollection, I don't know that he ever even took the exam to be an officer. So it wasn't about rank structure for me at that point. It was about who can I use to help resolve this issue to create a better culture. And I happened to, at that point, have a great resource, a guy who everyone respected. You know, and I think I tend to do this in some of these questions. I went off a little bit
No, you're fine.
and took a turn, but I believe in that. I believe that that there are culture creators throughout every organization. Some of them are officers, some of them are not. And if you could pinpoint who they are, you can easily create a successful, winning, thriving culture.
Yeah.
But you have to get them on board to do it. Yeah. Because if not, they could start preaching a different message. And you could be the one that says, hey, I'm the boss.
Oh, yeah.
Do it my way. Well, are they going to do it your way? Yeah, because they don't want to lose their job. But at the same point, you don't have the respect at all when you do that one time, if that's the way you do it.
Yeah, as a station officer in charge of a crew now, I really have realized how important it is to have people like that person you're talking about on my crew. People that will deal with manageable issues without me even knowing it. And I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Something that is super serious or needs to be sent up the chain. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about things that can be dealt with without me even knowing it. Having that, man, is so helpful. It takes so much off of my plate. And not that I'm trying to raise myself above, petty stuff, but really, I mean, there's so many things that an officer is responsible for. Having people like that to deal with the small stuff and to take care of it and show leadership, show ownership, and it is awesome.
It is awesome. It is awesome because, I mean, you think about it, there are 3-alarm fires, and then there are fires that have barely gotten out. Excuse me. There's 3-alarm fires, and there's fires that barely got out of the incipient stage.
Yep.
Right. Not even, maybe, a pot on a stove type things. And it's good to have someone deal with the pots on the stove incident, that where you don't have to go and solve every single problem, because they're going to have to solve a lot of problems themselves. Yep. When these incidents come in. And you need people that think, you need people that take ownership, to take responsibility. And how do you solve the problems out there if we can't solve the problems right here? Yep. So I know these conversations are great ones to have with your crew. Oh, yeah. I've had these conversations where I told my crew, I want to be the go-to group. I want to be the group that everybody would want to have working when things happened in our community that maybe you don't want other crews to be here for. Yeah. I don't know if I worded that right, but I just wanted to be, I wanted to be the go-to crew. I didn't want to say when the shit hits the fan, but I'm just going to say I want to be the crew on duty when the shit hits the fan. Yeah. And so that's, something that some people will buy into and some people won't. Yeah. You'll have some people that'll be like, oh, but here's what I found out is that we would have people come over to our group and at certain times that maybe they weren't training. Come here. They weren't training the way we were, and we would have them come over, and they would like the way we train. This is Nicholas right now. He's the one I was telling you about earlier. You want to say hi?
Hi.
Go on, Nicholas. How you doing? I'm Jeremy.
That's Jeremy. I know you can't hear him.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I forgot. I guess I didn't realize that.
So. All right, go ahead. And shut the door on the way out, all right? Thanks. That's okay. So when he woke up this morning, because we're doing remote learning through through this hopefully tail end of COVID, he's like, can I wear my PJs today? And his mother says, no, because she wants him. I said, let him wear his PJs. I mean, it's not like anybody's going to see him. And now here he is being broadcast on a podcast. So But and by the way, that's a conversation for anyone that's listening, that Jeremy and I just spoke about just before this started. He has his son doing remote learning. We have our boys home doing remote learning, and we said, if they come in and interrupt during it, let's just let that happen, because that's life. Step Up and Lead has been a pretty popular book, and here's something I'll tell you. I wrote that book. I didn't have this office right now. I wrote that book at my kitchen table with one kid, who was young enough to actually be, on the table, in a car seat, so to speak, or whatever they call it, sleeping, and another one tugging at my leg. And now this is my office where I do my work. But I'm gonna show you something about my office. It's a mess right now because we're cleaning it because it's almost Christmas time. But it's also my kids' playroom. It's my kids' playroom. So when I'm here writing a book, working on a new project, they're usually sitting right here playing, with a new toy, saying, "Hey, Dad, can you help me with this?" And there are times when I say, "Hey, listen, Daddy needs the next 2 hours just to focus." And there's times I ask them to shut the door, but there's times that I love when they're right here. And sometimes my dog is right here too, and I love that. I want them around me. This is why I do what I do, and try to make a difference. One of the things that we don't talk about enough in the fire service is legacy. What's a great legacy for a firefighter? You know what a great legacy is? When people say he or she was a great firefighter. That's a great legacy. And you know who they are in your group. You know who the great firefighters on your department are, or the stories of the ones who left. Uh, that's a great legacy to leave, and in this industry. But here's the thing about it, Jeremy, you don't get to choose if people say you were a great firefighter. They choose whether or not they want to say that. What you get to choose, and what I get to choose, and what everybody listening gets to choose, is what type of firefighter they're going to be when they're there. And is it going to be one that's eager to learn, willing to change and invest time, somebody who wants to train, somebody who's training even when there's not a drill going on, and says, there's something I want to learn. I'm going to pick up a book or watch a video or take that tool out and just tamper with it a little bit. Those are awesome things. My other son, Frankie, they had practice yesterday, indoor practice yesterday. After practice, um, we jumped on a mound. Practice was over, and we had them both throw about 25 pitches. Frankie went first, and he was off, which he's usually not off. He's usually spot on, but he was off. Nicholas came on. He pitched pretty good. Frankie says, "Dad," and we're ready to go. It's raining. It's miserable. It's now what? It's now about 8 o'clock at night. They're hungry. We didn't even eat yet. We were left for a 1 hour practice, or I'm sorry, it was 7:30 at night, but they didn't eat yet. And we left for what was going to be a 1 hour practice, and it's an hour and 45 minutes later. We were still there. And as we're getting ready to leave, Frankie goes, "Can I pitch one more time?" I said, "No, you're done." He goes, "I just want to go one more time." I'm like, "You sure?" He goes, "Yeah." That's him. That's who he is. He's the kid that says, "I want to do more." He understands the value of it. He understands saying, "I'm not good enough. I have to work harder than other kids, but I'm willing to put that time in." That's who he is. And then when people sometimes, if he has a good day and makes a good play, people will think, "Oh, yeah, he's kind of a natural." It's not a natural. He works for it,
Yeah.
works very hard for it. And that's what we want with our firefighters too. None of us are natural at doing it. Vent enter search. When's the last time you did a vent enter search drill? When is the last time you actually forced entry on a door? When's the last time you did a relay pumping drill or anything? We all train, but there's so much to train on. Stay focused. And again, my kids walk in and it just triggers somebody's thoughts because I know their work ethic. I know that I love being around them. But when I was in the firehouse, I can tell you this: I loved being around those guys too that I worked with. And I say guys, we had girls on our group too, but I love being around all of them.
I think that's something I'm really trying to, a mindset that I'm trying to create. And some have it and some don't. And what I mean by this is, so just an example, we did a search and rescue drill a couple of weeks ago, and before, trying to think how we rotate a topic every day of the week has a topic. So for example, Mondays are Mayday, so self-rescue, Mayday drills, anything like that. Tuesdays are ladders, Wednesdays are hose, things like that. So Thursdays are rescue. And a couple months ago, we were on Thursdays, and so we did some rescue stuff. We did some drags a new way, and we really liked it. And so that's what we adopted. So two months later, just a week or so ago, it was Thursdays again, and we got out into our burn house and did some search and rescue drills, and I got on a victim and completely screwed it up. I mean, literally just 2 months from doing this same technique several times and getting good at it, I felt, but I literally, I wouldn't even, like, my body was not even in the right position, and it was terrible. And so I wasn't going to end the day like that. And, at the end of when everybody else went through it, I went through it again just so I could do it right.
Yeah.
And that is the mentality I really want to foster in these people that are with me is, if you're doing a forcible entry drill and you mess the tool up because you're not real comfortable about the placement and the angles and stuff, that doesn't mean that you finish that evolution and you're done. You you got to want to keep doing that until you're good at it. And I just I want to create a feeling in somebody that just hates that. I want them to hate the idea that I screwed that up and I
Yeah.
need to work on it some more. You know what I mean? And that's
Yeah.
exactly what you're talking about, with your kids. And I
Yeah.
really want to create that.
Yeah. And that's hard to create. And
Yeah.
I can tell you how I did it with Frankie, because I did help create that with Frankie. And here's how. It's how I introduce him. He's not here. If Frankie walked in right now, I would introduce everybody to him and I'd say, "This is my son, Frankie." I said, "Let me tell you something about him." And he always gets embarrassed right there. And sometimes he'll hide because he knows what I'm going to say, but he still hears it. I say, "Frankie knows that nothing comes easy. He knows that he has to work hard to be successful. But that's why he has been so successful as a young athlete and in other areas of his life, because he is not afraid of hard work." And I think people will rise or fall to meet your level of expectations of them. So that's one of the things that that we would say to him. And I have other things that I say about Nicholas, my other son, for similar reason, is to try, because I see where they're, I guess, being my kids, I see what they need to
Yeah.
hear. Like I know Frankie has natural athletic ability, but I also know that so did I at his age, and he's very similar to me. And I also know that I didn't have the work ethic. I did everything my coach told me to do, but I never did more. And it's not because I was lazy. It was because I didn't realize that people were in their backyards practicing. I didn't realize that when I was wrestling and taking the winter off or taking the whole summer off, people were wrestling year round. And I would come back the next season and go, what just happened? I mean, these guys all got so much better. And I didn't know that the guys that I was wrestling against were wrestling in the summer too. Um, so it was those types of things that make me want to kind of prepare them for success. Uh, and that same thing with the firefighters again. To bring it back to them, people will rise or fall to meet your level of expectation for them. Now you can give them the tools, the training, the resources, the time, the support. You can give them everything they need to succeed. But what I've discovered is you can't give them the heart. So if they don't have that, oh man, burning desire to want to be great, you might not be able to create that. You could try though. I had one firefighter I worked with. I love this guy, loved him, and he would get so hard on himself, come down so hard on himself when he messed up, like angry, to a point where I actually saw him take a piece of his equipment, I might have been his helmet, I don't remember, and just slam it because he was so mad that he did not achieve a certain time in a drill we were doing.
Yeah.
And I had to pull him aside and I said, look, I said, I love your passion. I love your passion, but don't let it become your downfall. Because if you make a mistake on a fire ground and respond that way, you will make 2 mistakes and maybe 3. And maybe the first mistake was a recoverable one and the second one won't be. I need you to maintain your posture. I need you to maintain, this even level to say, all right, I didn't do it the way I want to do it. I'm going to do it better. I'm going to do it right now. Keep your passion, but channel it. And I had to work with him on that.
That's awesome. And again, I love these, flipping back and forth. We're talking family, we're relating it to fire service, we're talking fire service, relating it to family, and you saying that brings something to mind for me, family wise. And so our youngest daughter is a very intense girl. She is, she's 12 and loves basketball and softball. And in, by intense, I'd say that's probably pretty light for a 12-year-old girl. And so, she is very new in basketball. She's only played a few years and has a lot of learning and, trying to get better at it. But defense is like her specialty. She's out there and nobody's going to get by her basically. But and this is a conversation my wife and I have had with her several times. It's good to be intense and it's good to be I'm trying to think of the word, aggressive. That's the big word we
Yeah.
talk about. But you have got to kind of channel that. You can't allow that to just freaking lose your mind and throw these girls around, or you got to stay within the bounds of the rules. But in no means don't ever think that we are trying to get you to not be aggressive.
Right.
That's awesome. But we have got to learn how to kind of work with that and use the good of it and kind of fight the bad. And so that's right along the same lines
and
and
that's our
that's
job. It's
go
our
ahead. Yeah.
job, right? Like as a parent or as a fire service leader, is to guide people in the right direction. So I love that story though, because she reminds me of the one I just said. You got that passion, you got that fire, but you need to channel it.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I was about to say that's what we are supposed to do. We're supposed to find, we're not going to be given amazingly perfect people. We're given humans, and just like us, they've got good things, they've got bad things, and that is our job to boost the good, but also really dig into those negatives or the lesser parts of their character, whatever you want to say about it, and create better in those areas. And that is, if you want to boil it down, that's why we're here. And especially as parents, we're trying to create better, I don't know what a good term for that is, trying to create better people, and so I
better
love it.
people, people that can find their way through life, and I mean, think about it. I want them to have life lessons so they're more prepared to navigate through challenges. And it's the same reason why when you train, you want to train with try to create some real world scenarios, uh, some realistic situations to put people in to help them perform at a high level. It's similar to like Sully landing the plane on the Hudson River. I read once that Sully never trained to land a plane on water, but he trained to remain calm when things went wrong.
Yep.
And was able to do so in the most dire consequences and save all those lives.
Yep.
And it's kind of the same thing. Like if we train ourselves to we all have our own passion, desire. We're all built differently. Everybody's. I mean, I know firefighters who they were like I used to say Eli Manning would make a great firefighter, right? Because Eli Manning was a guy that if he was winning or losing, you can never tell with his expression, because
Yeah.
like here's a guy that just wins the Super Bowl or throws a touchdown in a Super Bowl or just fumbled in a big game, and I see the same exact expression on his face. And I remember saying he'd be a great incident commander because that, he's not screaming on a microphone on the outside the building. He's
Yeah.
maintaining his composure, like him or not. I mean, granted, Eli Manning is a guy that as a Giants fan from this part of the world in northern New Jersey, as a Giants fan, we all loved him, but at the same time, we were all so frustrated because he gave us 2 storybook seasons, and half the people that were Giants fans blamed the offensive line for him getting sacked, and the other half blamed Eli, but everybody still loved him.
Yeah.
Because he was just a guy who just went out there, did his job,
Yeah.
and when it really mattered, for 2 seasons, he made some wonderful things happen. But and it's interesting when you're talking about your family. Next thing you know, you're talking about Eli Manning. But the point I'm trying to make though is that he maintained his composure,
Yeah.
whether you loved him or did not like him. He was a guy, and I watched this in coaches a lot. I watch this with coaches a lot, especially in baseball. A big game, and they go down by 6 runs, and I watch the managers when the camera goes over on the sideline, and majority of them look like it's game 3 of the season, and they're winning by 6 runs,
Yeah.
meaning no difference. And as a guy who has done both things, managed baseball games at a much lower level, little league level, but as a guy who has managed baseball games and fire scenes, I've tried to emulate that and say, all right, you know what? Whatever the situation is, I'm going to maintain my composure so I can make the best decisions I can for the team. Because when you get emotional about things, you start to make poor decisions. And like, you could relate that back to your daughter's story or that firefighter story. If you get too emotional, your emotions take over. And all of a sudden, you just did something that now, how many times you see an athlete, emotions get the best of them, does something stupid, gets kicked out of a game or gets fined or suspended, and now gets this terrible reputation. And maybe they're a great person who had a bad moment. And most people that I think out there, uh, let's just take firefighters in our industry. I think most firefighters are really good people. And nobody comes to work saying, I'm going to do something really stupid today. But they had a bad moment, and they did. And we need to be aware of that when it happens and say, why? Why did they do what they just did? Are they a person who makes bad choices, or is it a person who is not dealing with an issue in their life right now properly and doesn't know how to, and they're too emotional? And we need to be aware of these things so we can address it properly. And that's a whole nother podcast episode, by the way.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I heard this morning, and I've I've listened to several here the last couple of days, just trying to make sure I absorbed as much as I could. But something you said on the podcast is, I can't motivate you, only you can motivate you. And I would like to just get your thoughts on it just for a little bit, but just kind of personally, that has been a struggle for me here lately.
Yeah.
And when I say that, I mean, I have taken it really personal. Maybe that's not the right way to say it, but it's affected me that I don't feel like I can motivate my people sometimes. I really take it like, man, what kind of a leader am I? I'm trying to do these good things. I'm trying to, create a culture that is going to benefit us not only, but everybody around us. And I'm trying to do good, but I just can't get through to these people. And I really started kind of taking that as, I am not a very good leader. And so, that being said, with what you stated, I can't motivate you. You can only motivate you. How how do you personally handle those situations when you are trying so hard to get somebody beyond their expectations and do good things for somebody, and they just you just can't get through?
Yeah, well, that whole term, I can't motivate you, only you can motivate you, was part of a conversation. Let me put this in the right context. What motivates me will not motivate you. I have a different hot button. And so that hot button that motivates me, I can push that all day long on other people and maybe not get a response, and it frustrates me. How does that not make you want to be better? That could be frustrating for me. But what I'm failing to realize is that they have a hot button too, and I need to identify what theirs are. And I've had those conversations where I've said to people, I'm giving you everything you need to succeed, but you need to bring the heart. You need to, and some people, they don't want, they just, they're content. They don't want to get better at what they're doing. And that's a hard thing. But here's what I would say is try to find out what pushes them, what motivates them, where their hot button is. Like, let's put it this way. There are thousands of people why people work. Thousands of people are reasons. And I couldn't even name them all. But I can tell you that every single one of them will fall into one of these 6 categories. People work for time. People work for money. People work for security. They work for recognition. They work to belong to a team. And they work to make a difference. So those are the 6 primary motivators. So how do you work for time? That's like saying, if I work here, I get some comp time, I could take that time off or maybe work some overtime, I get some few extra bucks and take that weekend vacation with my family. So you're trading your time to get your time back. We know what it works to work for money and security. Well, if you work for a paid fire department, you'll have money and you'll have some security. So what else motivates people? To belong to a team, to make a difference, and recognition. So what I want to try to do is provide those 3 things for people. I need you to understand you belong to a team and you make a difference on the team. You play a role on this team. And I want to praise people when they do things right. If I could provide these things for them, well, that might be their hot button. I've seen this before. I mean, listen, there's one kid that motivated my entire baseball team when he was 7 to do something they still do today at 10. At 7 years old, we had run 2 practices in a row. And at the end of our first 2 practices, this little boy came up to me and said, "Coach, thank you." And just reaches up and shakes my hand. And I said, "You're welcome." So the second day he did it, I went up to his father and I said, "Yeah, it's 2 days in a row that he came up and thanked me for practice." I said, I've coached at that point probably about 15 teams. That's the first time any kids ever come up and really meant it.
Yeah.
And not at the end of the season, at the end of a practice. So the third practice, I brought the entire team together. We do life lessons. We'll do a 1-minute life lesson at every practice. Like I'm going to do one on body language at our next practice. Your body language is telling people around you. It's speaking to them. If you're angry, if you're scared, your body language is telling the story of what you are right there. So if you step into the batter box scared, that pitcher's going to know it and take advantage of that moment. So that's going to be our life lesson. But our life lesson this day was appreciating people that put time into helping make you better. And I talked about this little boy, Jack, and I said, Jack has come up to me 2 practices in a row and thanked me. And then I watched him thank the other coaches. I said, it's made such an impression on me. I want all of you to do it. And I said, and I don't want all of you to do this because I need this for me. I want you to do this because you will make an impression, the right impression on all the people that are going to help you moving forward. Do this with your teachers after school each day. Do this with your coaches on your other teams. And I promise you that it's going to help you in life because they're going to see that you value them and they're going to put more time and effort into helping you because people want to help people that want to be helped. And they all do it to this day. At the end of each practice, we have 12 kids coming up to every coach. Thank you, coach. Thank you, coach. Thank you. All you hear is thank you for the last minute of every practice. It's a beautiful thing. And there's another thing, by the way, just because I'm on this topic, I want to put this out there.
Yeah.
On my team, you are not allowed to make a negative comment about our other players. Like if they're having a bad day, you can't come down on them for having a bad day. You need to say words that will build them up. That's number one. And you're not allowed to cheer for the other team to fail.
Yeah.
Because my son has played in games where, a ball's hit to the outfield and he's got kids 3 years old yelling, drop it, drop it, drop it. But he doesn't drop it. And I said, if I ever hear you yell, drop it, you'll sit on the bench. We don't allow that. Well, also with my group, we were a family. Fire department, we were a family. And we could talk about things we're unhappy about as long as we're talking about solutions. But we didn't want negative talk about the people that weren't working that day in a way that it was condescending or could hurt them. Yeah. It was, if there was something that needed to be discussed, come to my office and talk to me about it. So one day I show up at work and there is a captain from another group working with us that day, talking about a firefighter from another group. And when I walked into the kitchen, he's holding court. He's got my entire, an engine and ladder company around him. And I could hear as I'm walking in, he's saying really condescending things about this firefighter. And I walk into the room and he sees me. And when he sees me, I know he initially didn't think, oh, what do? I just got busted. But he sees me and he goes, yeah, Chief, what are they going to do about this guy? I said, what guy? Because I didn't know who he was even talking about yet. Yeah. And he mentions the firefighter's name. I said, well, what about him? What about him? He's lazy. He doesn't do his job. He's stupid. And he just starts just trying, like a chief walked in. I just said this to all the guys. I'll just say, yeah. What are you doing about it, Chief? What are you guys going to do about it? I said, well, let me ask you something. What group is he on? And he says, what group? It's this guy's group. And I said, who's his captain? He goes, I am. I said, you're his captain? He says, yeah. I said, well, let me ask you a question, Cap. What are you going to do about him? He says, me? What would I have to do with it? You're his officer. I said, do you think because now this is a conversation I'd rather have in private, but he's open, he's like, yeah. He's grandstanding right now in front of everybody. So I said, Cap, these things on your collar are not for show. If you have a person who is an issue, the thing to do is address it with that person, not come to another group and smear his reputation, because that the reputation that somebody gets in their first couple months on the job is going to stay with them for 22 years or more. I said, if it's an issue that you can't resolve, I'm going to give you some advice. Go to your deputy chief and have your deputy chief deal with it. And if he can't, he'll go to the chief. I said, but don't come here and do it this way. Yeah. And but that's the culture in many, not just fire departments. That's the culture in many workplaces. Yeah. And it's a hard culture to change, but sometimes things like that have to happen for you to try to change it. And I'm not saying I did the perfect thing. I mean, sometimes I was the guy at different times in my career that I would sit at the kitchen table and complain about things. Why? Because I thought that's what you were supposed to do. Everybody else did it. I thought it's what you're supposed to do. But at some point you realize, wait, now I'm in an influential position, like a senior man or a lieutenant or captain or chief officer, and I need to be smarter with my actions. And that's why I know why some chief officers don't do breakfast, lunch, and dinner with the firefighters on shift. And some do, because some have found a way that I can do breakfast, lunch, and dinner with you and still make you understand that I'm going to hold you accountable. Yeah. And some are like, I want to create that distance from them. So when I do come down on them, they know this is serious. So everybody has their own way of doing it, just like every pitcher has their own way of throwing pitches. And I can't tell you this way is 100% right and this way is 100% wrong. Sometimes it's and you just have to find what's good for you, what works for you. But the important thing is that we address we address it when people are doing the wrong things in the fire station, on the fire ground. We have to address it, and it's best to critique or criticize in private. And back on our topic just from a couple minutes ago, it's really good to praise in public.
Yeah.
And remember that, praise in public, criticize in private. And if we do those two things, that's a good starting point for us getting where we want to go. And the reason you praise in public, you tend to get more of the same. Hey, Jack really impressed me. He said thank you after practice. Now I've never had a practice without him. I've coached him on several teams. I've never had a practice without him in 3 years where he didn't thank me. And so he does it all the time. He's been praised for it in public, but now all his teammates do it because they say, oh, that's what we're supposed to do. Okay, I get it now. I'll do it too. There's power in that.
Oh yeah. Now that kind of brings up a personal story again for me. I am fighting kind of what you're talking about right now with my crew, and that's because of my actions in the past. I went through a very resentful, irritated, frustrated, even angry phase towards, just be honest, towards our admin, about different situations. And on one hand, I'm not sorry for that because that's what led me to sit right here talking to you today. That frustration led me to do the things I am doing away from the fire department. But at the same time, I allowed myself to be negative and to sit at the table and to, just completely throw it all out there for all the Chiefs. And, this is, you know, everything you just said, that's who I not only was, but who I fostered in my crew.
Yeah.
And I have since, of course, seen the negatives of that and seen how bad that is. And now on the road of correcting that and taking that out of who we are. But that's a long road, and I can only blame myself because I am the reason that it's like that. I allowed it. And so now it's just going to be so much harder for me to eliminate. And that's kind of the road I'm on right now. I don't care to talk about chief, deputy chief, battalion chief, whatever. I don't care. It doesn't, I have no control over anything they do. So it doesn't do me or any of my people any good to sit there and gripe about them or show frustration about them or anything. So let's not do it. And
Yeah.
I, it's on a road that I need to be on to do better. But I'm just saying, when you allow those things to occur and then you really see the light of what you're doing, it creates a hard road to come back from, for sure.
Yeah. Well, but the important thing is that you recognize it. See, I did it
Yeah.
too. I did it too. And I think it's as you get older, more mature, more experienced, maybe reach different levels in your career, you start to see things a little bit differently and say, all right, that's not the right way to do it.
Yeah.
But I know very few people who did not go through that phase.
Yeah.
Very few. Matter of fact, I can't even tell you anyone I know for sure who didn't go through that phase
Yeah.
because I've heard tons of people, sit down and complain. The people who didn't complain were usually the people who didn't say anything at all. Because you have those people that just, I mean, I've worked with some people that I never even knew what their voice sounded like. I'm not even joking about that.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I have one kid on one of our teams. He's a shortstop on one of our teams that it took 2 years before I heard his voice. The kid's phenomenal baseball player. He just barely talks, and he's very quiet when he does. And when all the kids are chanting positive stuff, and he's not even chanting, he's just sitting there smiling, enjoying the moment. I had firefighters like that too, where um, it's just different personalities. And I kind of like that because they don't spread negative, but they're not talking about solutions or talking positive either. They're just
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
in the room. We all need to learn to be better. We all need to learn to channel our energy that way. But and I ask this in my seminars, I say, how many people in this room have ever made a mistake, whether it be wearing your uniform or not, have made a mistake that you regret, that if you could go back and change it, if you could, you would. And every time, every hand in the room goes up. And we're talking sometimes 2, 3, 400 people. Every hand in the room goes up. And I make them keep their hands up for a while. I want to see all of you. Raise your hand. You made a mistake. Okay. Put your hand down. And this is what I say to them. Forgive yourself.
Yep.
You have a right to become a better version of who you are. But you have to forgive yourself for the mistakes you made, for the way you did things wrong, and understand it was a stage. It was a phase. We all go through it. There's very few things I talk about when I talk about in my books. I talk about ways not to do things. There's very few things I talk about that didn't come from personal experience, mistakes that I made. And that's why I'm passionate to talk about this thing, because I don't think experience is the best teacher. I think other people's experience is the best teacher. And I want to give people my experiences to say, if you're that person who has complained instead of focused on solutions, I've had a phase of my life where that was me. I've been there. And I guess what? I didn't like being around me during that time frame. So I can't imagine anybody else liked being around me, because I'm like, oh, like there's a couple, you get to that point where you'll hear somebody say, man, you're miserable. And you'll sit back and think, I guess I do sound, but I'm not really miserable. No, you are miserable. If other people don't want to be around you, you're miserable. But what we need to realize is this. People judge us on our actions, not our intentions. You judge people and I judge people. We all judge people, not deliberately. It's just an instinctual thing. You are getting an impression of someone. You're determining what you think that person's all about when you meet them based on their actions, not their intentions. So we need to be more aware of our own actions, because if we're doing the things that are counterproductive, people are going to look at us that way. If we're complaining, and we're complaining because we honestly want positive change. That's why we're complaining. But we're complaining because we want positive change. But we're not talking about positive change. We're just complaining. Well, guess what we are? Complainers. That's what everybody sees, because that's what we're doing. But if you're a person that follows up the complaint with, why don't we try doing this? Hey, Chief, if we're being honest with ourselves, we train a lot, but we're doing it wrong. That's not a complainer.
Yep.
That's a change agent. That's a culture creator. That's a guy that says, I have an idea. And that's what we need more of. So it's like I say all the time, it's okay to identify a problem as long as you bring a solution with it. May not be the right solution, but it's a starting point. So forgive yourself if you feel you've ever done things that even gave you a bad reputation. I've done things that have given me a bad reputation. I'm sure there are people in this world that don't have a high opinion of me because of whatever experience they had with me at that point in our life, which could have been 15 years ago, 25 years ago. It was a negative one. I had a kid that I recently got together with a kid that I knew from high school. And he said something very interesting to me. I was a very what's the word? Insecure kid when I was younger, when I was the age of my boys. And Frankie's older than Nicholas. But when I was about 12, 13, 14 years old, I was pretty insecure. I didn't have a lot of confidence in myself. And I was wrestling since the age of 7. But I didn't have that kind of swagger that a lot of kids had that wrestled. And I recently, about a year ago, got together with a kid. He came over and visited with his wife, and we were talking. And he says to my wife, he goes, "Yeah." He talked about me, saying he was my nemesis when I was younger. He was really hard on me. He used to like bully me. And I go, "Bully you? I never bullied anybody in my life." And he goes, "Oh, you used to bully me." I go, "How?" He goes, yeah, we would come down to the corner and we would play, and you would always want to wrestle, and you'd beat me up." And I'm like, all right, I could see how he perceived that as being bullied. I could see that now. Back then it was just me doing something I knew how to do, wrestle, but I was wrestling him a lot because I knew I could beat him. When there was other kids down at the street that I wouldn't want to wrestle because I didn't want to get embarrassed. But in turn, I'm embarrassing him. See, I didn't see it from his point of view. I only saw it from my own. And when he said that, I sat back and thought, well, how about that? I said, I would bet that the kids that did this to me have no idea how I feel about them today. That I looked at them as bullies. I think they're bad people. And he might have had that impression of me. And, I'm glad he actually didn't have that impression of me where he thought I'm a bad person. But for that period of time in our life, I was a person that when he turned a corner to come play with all the kids, he looked at me and probably said, oh, no, he's here. So we need to be more aware of who we are. We need to be more aware of how we make other people feel. And we all have a right to be that guy and to change and become a better version of ourselves because now we know what we were doing is wrong. I hope that all makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. And that it kind of goes back to one of the first things we talked about, sharing your message and actually do it, make that step, do something. And I always say it, everybody goes through these hard times, these struggles, these trials, whatever you want to call them. You are completely wasting those chances to help somebody else if you keep those inside. You went through that for no reason if you don't share that with somebody. And like you said, let somebody else learn from your experiences so they don't have to learn from it themselves. You know what I mean? And,
Yeah.
and I
Yep.
think that is another big thing that people need to hear for sure.
Awesome. Well, this is a fun conversation, I'll tell you.
I really appreciate it. I want to be respectful of your time. I'm enjoying my time with you here, but uh, to wrap it up, I will say this. I fully expected to get a lot of inspiration from you as far as leadership and fire service and things like that, but I truly did not expect to be inspired to be a better parent as much as I have been in this hour and I don't know what hour and a half. I have truly been inspired by you to be a better parent, and I really appreciate that. And man, I can't tell you how much that means to me because I love being a fire service leader, but I will give it up tomorrow if it means that I can be a better parent at home, a better leader at home. And so thank you very much for that. I appreciate
Thank you for that. So let's do this. Let's end this podcast a little bit differently
it. Okay.
than anyone I've been on yet. And let's say this to all the listeners who are parents. If you are in your house with them right now, you turn this podcast off, go do something with your children to make them better, to make them feel better about themselves. Um, during this pandemic, um, my wife had recently said, we're driving down the street and here we are. This thing started in what, March? And here we are in November now. This was November when it happened. And my wife turns to my boys and says, as we're driving, I'm really proud of both of you. And Nicholas says, for what? And she says, for the way that you have handled this pandemic and the way that you have been through all of this. I'm just proud of you. And Frankie says, honestly, I don't feel like there's anything different. And what we took away from that is because they still feel loved, they still feel safe, they still feel valued. They still every night at 3 a.m. wake up and run into mommy and daddy's bed. And we still praise them when they do things right. We still have family dinners together. We still do all these things that make them feel like the world is going crazy out there, but not in here. So if you're home right now and you get off this podcast, go spend time with your family and make a memory. If you're not home right now, maybe you're at work, maybe you're driving, the next time you are with them, turn off the world and just turn on that moment.
No,
So,
absolutely.
so thank
That's
you for
awesome.
saying that.
Before we go, I'll give you a chance to kind of let everybody know where to find you, get a hold of you, any kind of information or that you want to share, and we'll get off
Yeah.
here.
Listen, I'm very easy to find. I mean, on social media, it's mostly my name, Frank Viscuso, spelled Viscuso. That's one of my dad's Christmas presents back there hanging up. But on Facebook, I have a Step Up and Lead page. And if you Google that, or I'm sorry, if you search for that, you'll find it. It's got about, I think, like 65,000 members on it. So I do a lot of activity on that. Probably where I'm the most active. But you'll find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, you name it. And then my website is my name too. I try to keep it simple, frankviscuso.com. There's information about books and seminars, and I will share this for the firefighters that do want to get promoted and are looking to advance their careers. Check out my website, fireopsonline.com, just like it sounds, fireopsonline.com, all one word. Everything's free, not selling anything on it. There's a store there with links to the books. I'm not trying to sell you a book there. Trust me, it's all free information. It's articles, it's test your knowledge, it's snapshot size ups, it's podcast interviews. It's just a whole bunch of free content just to help us be better at our craft. And it's a starting point for a lot of people. So those are the best ways to get a hold of me. And thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I want to just end by saying, as speaking for the fire service, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for what you've done. And definitely look forward to whatever's to come, and hopefully be able to get back and discuss some more stuff with you. Thank you.
Yeah, I look forward to that. Thank you, but you have a great day.
You too.
Bye bye.